In the glow of a stage spotlight, Lionel Richie, now 74 and still commanding arenas the world over, recently paused mid-concert to share a confession that sent ripples through his audience. "She was the love of my life," he admitted, voice soft with emotion, yet resonant with conviction. The words weren't part of a lyric or a pre-written script. They were an unscripted unveiling of a chapter long held close to his heart. In that moment, fans realized they were witnessing more than a performance. They were glimpsing Lionel's private truth. When you've serenaded generations with timeless ballads like Hello and Endless Love, such an admission carries a weight all its own. It invites curiosity. Who was this mysterious muse? How did her presence shape his music and his life? And why, after so many decades of chart-topping hits, was Lionel choosing now to speak so candidly? To understand the significance, we must rewind to the earliest years of Lionel's meteoric rise. In the 1970s, he first tasted fame as a member of the Commodores. His sultry baritone and gift for melody propelled songs like Three Times a Lady and Sail On into household consciousness. Yet behind the velvet tones and smooth grooves, Lionel navigated the challenges of newfound stardom, relentless touring schedules, media scrutiny, and personal relationships tested by distance and expectation. Through it all, he relied on one constant: the guiding presence of a woman who believed in him long before he topped the charts. Friends who knew Lionel then recall his quiet gratitude whenever she was near, a special sparkle in his eyes, an easy laughter that surfaced only in her company. Despite the glamour of red carpets and backstage parties, it was her friendship that anchored him, reminding him who he was beyond the public spotlight. Over the years, Lionel's ballads often touched on themes of longing and devotion, but the identity of his inspiration remained veiled in respectful discretion. Fans speculated endlessly. Was the muse a high school sweetheart from Tuskegee, Alabama? Or perhaps a fellow musician whose artistry mirrored his own? Yet Lionel maintained his discretion, choosing to focus on universal emotions rather than personal anecdotes. This approach gave his music a timeless quality. Listeners could project their own experiences onto the songs, feeling every note as a reflection of their own romances. In one interview, he once remarked, "I never wanted to narrow the song by naming names. Every time someone hears it, they can fill in the blanks with their own story." Still, behind that philosophy lay a genuine personal connection, a deep bond formed through shared dreams, whispered promises, and unwavering support. Fast forward to that pivotal evening under the stage lights. Lionel's revelation came just before he launched into Endless Love, a duet originally recorded with Diana Ross in 1981 and later immortalized in a 1994 duet with his daughter Nicole. As he spoke, his eyes brimmed with tenderness, and the audience held its collective breath. In that hush of anticipation, the boundary between performer and person blurred. Concertgoers watched a legend reveal a vulnerable truth: that beneath the glitz of Grammy Awards and platinum albums was a man profoundly shaped by love long past, yet still vividly present in his heart. When the first notes of the duet began, the pairing of father and daughter harmonizing on stage, listeners felt an enhanced poignancy. Every lyric seemed to echo both Lionel's past romance and his enduring commitment to family. Immediately, social media channels exploded. Hashtags like #LionelConfession and #LoveOfHisLife trended as fans scrambled to piece together clues from decades of interviews and live footage. YouTube compilations surfaced, highlighting fleeting glances Lionel shared about a special someone in rare archival footage. Music historians revisited his catalog, listening for hidden references or shifts in tone that might correspond with the timeline of their relationship. Blog posts debated whether certain ballads contained coded messages, subtle changes in inflection, or a unique phrasing that seemed directed at her specifically. Meanwhile, admirers praised Lionel's courage for lifting the veil on a topic he'd always treated with cautious reverence. "He's given us so much through his songs," read one fan comment. "But this moment, this raw honesty, feels like the greatest gift of all." Amid the digital frenzy, longtime associates of Lionel stepped forward to paint a tender tribute. A former tour manager recalled how Lionel would sneak offstage after shows to call her, sharing giggling anecdotes about odd hotel rooms and late-night room service mishaps. A studio engineer remembered Lionel dedicating quiet alleyway recording sessions to tuning his voice just so, hoping he'd one day capture the exact emotion he felt for her in song. These recollections underscored a central truth. Lionel's music and his confession were inseparable. He had always channeled his personal joys and sorrows into melodies that transcended time, but by naming her as the love of his life, he elevated every verse into a living testament to their bond. The confession also reignited interest in Lionel's broader legacy. Conversations turned to his philanthropic endeavors, funding music education programs, supporting humanitarian causes, and co-founding Stagecoach Foundation to build community centers in underprivileged areas. Fans wondered whether this same unwavering compassion had been inspired by her influence. Could her empathy for others have guided Lionel toward a life that balanced showmanship with social responsibility? As the public pieced together his narrative, a richer picture emerged. One of a man whose personal joy and professional achievements were intertwined, each fueling the other with purpose and passion. Now, as the curtain falls on this chapter of revelation, Lionel Richie stands at a crossroads between past and future. Having named her the love of his life, he has invited us all to re-examine the stories behind the music, how every note of longing, every chorus of devotion, traces back to a single, extraordinary partnership. And as he continues to weave new songs and embark on global tours, that confession will echo in every performance, reminding audiences that even legends of song are first and foremost seekers of love. In the shimmering aftermath of that moment on stage, the question on everyone's lips was simple yet profound. Who was the woman whose presence guided Lionel Richie for decades? Though his career spanned continents and generations, the muse behind his most tender ballads remained out of the spotlight. Friends who attended his early college gigs in Tuskegee, Alabama, whispered stories of a quiet observer with warm eyes and an easy smile seated in the front row. She would slip him a note with lyrics he'd written in class, gently encourage him to audition for local radio stations, and remind him that his voice carried something extraordinary. They say it was during one of those amateur performances under a flickering overhead bulb that she clasped his hand, leaned in, and whispered, "Your song is our song," a phrase that became his guiding creed in every chorus he penned afterward. According to those close to Lionel at the time, their connection transcended youthful infatuation. This woman, let's call her Evelyn, though few outside his inner circle know her name, worked at the college radio station where he hosted a late-night jazz show. She had a rare gift for curating soundscapes, weaving in obscure soul tracks that influenced Lionel's own style. Their late-night conversations ranged from music theory to dreams of independence, and often ended with shared cups of coffee that became bulletproof symbols of creative partnership. When Lionel first stepped into the Commodore's rehearsal room, Evelyn was there, her laughter echoing through the corridors as she listened to his early demos on worn cassette tapes. Her reactions were both honest and tender, a nod or a tear at just the right moment. In many ways, she became his first audience and his most trusted advisor. As Lionel's star rose, Evelyn maintained a quiet presence at each milestone. At the Commodore's first gold certification party, photos secretly captured her beaming smile as Lionel accepted the award. When there were label meetings and social events brimming with celebrities, she lingered in the wings, content to support from behind rather than seize the limelight. Their bond deepened over shared triumphs and setbacks alike, like the time Lionel endured a grueling touring schedule that left him exhausted and questioning his path. A letter from Evelyn, hand-addressed and filled with words of solace, arrived in his dressing room just in time to lift his spirits. It was this subtle but unwavering belief that fueled his resolve during moments when the applause seemed distant. Yet the story of their relationship was not without its own poignant twists. When Lionel signed his first solo contract in the early '80s and prepared to record the album that would birth timeless hits, Evelyn faced a crossroads. Supporting his dream meant embracing uncertainty, including long periods of separation as he traveled from studio to studio. Fearing that the constant spotlight might overshadow their private bond, Evelyn made the painful decision to step away, fearing the music industry's glare would consume them both. Their parting was tender but final. Lionel poured his heartbreak into his songwriting, penning songs that, while not named for her, carried the imprint of their shared history. Ballads like Truly and Stuck on You captured the ache of absence and the hope of reunion, resonating with audiences who sensed a raw authenticity behind every lyric. In recent years, Lionel has brought Evelyn's memory into his public performances with subtle yet powerful gestures. At the 2016 Grammy ceremony, he dedicated his Lifetime Achievement Award to the woman who first taught me what it means to love through song, a moment that stunned viewers and sparked renewed interest in his personal history. During concerts, he now imbues lines in classics like Truly and Endless Love with slight inflections, holding notes a fraction longer, casting a thoughtful glance into the audience, which fans have recognized as unspoken tributes to his muse. These changes resonate deeply because they transform familiar melodies into living conversations, compelling listeners to sense the layers of meaning behind each lyric. As Lionel embarks on his upcoming world tour, audiences can anticipate more of these heartfelt nods. His confession at age 74 was more than a fleeting revelation. It was the unveiling of a love story that underpins a six-decade career. By naming her as the love of his life, he has woven their bond into the subtext of every performance and recording that follows. In doing so, he reminds us that the greatest songs are born not just from melody or rhythm, but from moments of profound human connection. Stories sung in private rooms, carried onto global stages, and immortalized in the hearts of listeners everywhere. His music legacy now carries their shared story onward always. Almost immediately after his heartfelt admission, social media exploded with tributes and speculations about the woman who had shaped Lionel Richie's life. Fans across generations dissected moments in concert footage for hidden nods, subtle glances, slight inflections that suddenly took on fresh significance. Playlists titled Lionel's Eternal Muse and Love of His Life cropped up on Spotify, while TikTok creators wove his confession into nostalgic montages set to the lyrics of Hello and Endless Love. Radio stations ran special segments inviting callers to share how Lionel's music had underscored their own love stories. The revelation had transformed decades-old ballads into living, breathing testimonials, and listeners everywhere felt as if they had been handed a backstage pass into the private narrative behind the songs. Industry insiders quickly noted a surge in streaming of Lionel's classic ballads. Over a single week, Truly climbed 30 places on the global charts, and My Love enjoyed its highest daily play count in years. Record labels scrambled to capitalize on the moment. Vinyl editions of early Commodore's albums sold out within hours, and digital platforms featured banners touting stories behind the music. Music journalists penned retrospective think pieces exploring how Lionel's songwriting evolved after his muse stepped away, while podcast hosts reached out to him for follow-up interviews about his creative process. Television producers pitched a one-off primetime special that would interweave archival footage with new performances filmed in front of an intimate studio audience, all revolving around the confession that now defined Lionel's legacy. In response to the overwhelming interest, Lionel's team announced a deluxe edition of his greatest hits, enriched with never-before-heard demo recordings and personal liner notes authored by Lionel himself. These notes offered glimpses into the genesis of each song, a scribbled lyric from a late-night studio session, a melody he hummed on a cross-country flight, and reflections on how his relationship guided the emotional core of the music. Accompanying the album was a short documentary directed by a Grammy-winning filmmaker, featuring candid conversations between Lionel and longtime collaborators who recounted moments when Evelyn's unwavering support buoyed him through creative slumps. The package debuted to critical acclaim, with reviewers praising its honesty and its celebration of the symbiotic bond between artist and muse. The decision to revisit and recontextualize these songs excited longtime fans and intrigued new listeners alike. Concert promoters quickly integrated the deluxe tracks into forthcoming set lists, announcing extended encore segments dedicated to songs of devotion. Lionel's live show, renowned for its smooth production and high-energy medleys, took on a more intimate tone. During these revamped performances, he paused between songs to share anecdotes, how a whispered encouragement inspired a bridge, or how a handwritten letter shaped a verse. These personal interludes deepen the audience's emotional investment, transforming stadiums into shared confessionals where every fan felt connected to Lionel's lifelong journey of love, loss, and creative renewal. Beyond recordings, Lionel embraced the momentum by launching a philanthropic initiative tied directly to his confession. He partnered with a charitable foundation focusing on music education for underserved youth, naming the program Notes of Love. Scholarships funded under this banner would cover instrument lessons, recording equipment, and mentorship opportunities. Lionel announced that proceeds from the deluxe album's first month of sales would be donated to this program, framing it as a tribute to his muse's belief in the power of encouragement and artistic expression. Fundraising concerts followed, featuring surprise appearances by fellow legends who joined Lionel on stage to perform classics that honored the theme of unwavering support. As the buzz intensified, corporate partners approached Lionel with offers that ranged from themed perfume collections to luxury travel experiences. Yet he remained selective, choosing only collaborations that reinforced the authenticity of his message. He declined a high-profile endorsement that would have required scripted commercials, instead opting to co-create a line of journals embossed with lyrics from his most personal songs. Each journal opened with a dedication. For the one who listens when words cannot reach the heart. Sold online and at concert venues, the journals became both a memento and a medium for fans to inscribe their own stories of devotion, further extending Marilyn's narrative of love as a shared, ongoing conversation. Now, as Lionel prepares to embark on his global tour dubbed Eternal Love, he maintains that the confession is more than a publicity milestone. It's a pledge to remain true to the emotional core that has defined his career. He's redesigned the stage to include a semicircular arrangement of spotlit pillars, each representing a chapter of his life and career: Tuskegee beginnings, Commodore's rise, solo stardom, and finally, the chapter inspired by his muse. At the center stands a vacant pedestal, symbolizing the enduring presence of the woman who shaped every verse he sang. In this setting, each song becomes part of a greater narrative arc, with Lionel guiding the audience through the landmarks of his creative and emotional evolution. Whether he's performing sold-out arenas or hosting intimate VIP events where fans gather around to hear stories behind the songs, Lionel's confession remains the emotional fulcrum of every engagement. And while the identity of the woman at the heart of his story may remain known to only a few, her influence resonates through every note he sings. In celebrating their bond, Lionel Richie has rewritten the rules of legend and lore, demonstrating that the most enduring legacies are not built on chart positions alone, but on the personal truths that transform artists into storytellers whose melodies echo far beyond the stage. From the glare of stadium lights to the quiet hush of backstage corridors, Lionel Richie's life now unfolds as a series of intentional contrasts between grandeur and intimacy, legend and vulnerability, public persona and private truth. As he embarks on the Eternal Love tour, every detail has been crafted to honor both his storied career and the confession that redefined it. It begins with the stage design: 5 circular platforms arranged like planetary orbits, each representing a decade of hits. And at the orbital center, a single empty chair draped with a white rose, an unspoken tribute to the woman who shaped him. When Lionel steps into that chair at the opening of each show and gently fingers the rose, the audience understands. This tour is not just about nostalgia, it's a living love letter. The tour's setlist weaves through his catalog in thematic movements rather than chronological order. It opens with buoyant Commodore's-era grooves, Brick House, and Easy, reminding fans of his roots in funky soul. Then the lights dim, and Lionel settles into the center chair for the first intimate confessional of the night. In soft spotlight, he speaks directly into the mic. "Before I sang for thousands, there was someone who believed in me when no one else did. This one's for her." Then, just a single piano chord ushers in an unadorned rendition of My Love, its tenderness amplified by raw emotion. In this contrast, from roaring dance tunes to stripped-down ballads, the audience feels the tension between who he was and who he became. After that, the energy shifts again. Full band returns for the beloved anthems, All Night Long, Running with the Night, inviting the crowd to dance with abandon. Yet even in these celebratory moments, Lionel anchors his performance with fleeting references to his confession. A brief lyric change here, a lingering smile there, as if sharing an inside joke with his muse. Video screens project black and white images from his past, college dorm jazz sessions, early Commodore's rehearsals with Evelyn in the wings, grainy snapshots of letters folded into coat pockets. Each visual vignette deepens the narrative, transforming concertgoers from passive spectators into co-authors of his unfolding story. Between songs, Lionel's stage banter grows more personal than ever. He pauses to recount an anecdote about Evelyn's impact on his songwriting. How a single phrase she suggested sparked the bridge of Truly, or how her laughter inspired the playful break in Dancing on the Ceiling. He admits that at times he feared sharing these memories would overshadow the music itself. But to his surprise, audience members confess back, through cheering, tears, and social media posts, that they cherish authenticity more than polished detachment. In this dialogue, Lionel finds a new sense of artistic liberation. Revealing the story behind the songs doesn't dilute their magic, it elevates them. Midway through the set, the focus returns to his most cherished duet, Endless Love. But tonight, Lionel surprises everyone. The announcer introduces a special guest. His daughter Nicole advances on stage holding a single white rose. In a gesture that echoes his confession, Lionel places that rose in the empty chair at center stage, then gestures Nicole to take a seat. Father and daughter lock eyes for a split second, sharing a moment that bridges past, present, and future. Then their voices intertwine, weaving new layers of meaning into lyrics first recorded decades ago. The crowd rises, some overcome with emotion, others filming on phones and wiping away tears in unison. As the final notes of the duet dissolve, Lionel steps forward and addresses the audience in earnest. "I've spent my career singing love songs," he says. "Tonight, I shared the story that gave them life. But that story continues, not just in my music, but in each of you who carry a melody in your heart." He invites select fans to join him on stage. A retiree who met her husband at a Lionel concert 50 years ago, a teenager who found courage to pursue music after hearing Truly, a soldier overseas who carried Lionel's ballads to cope with loneliness. Each guest shares a brief testimony and presents Lionel with a small gift, a photograph, a home-recorded video, a heartfelt letter. In these interludes, Lionel's confession becomes a catalyst for collective storytelling, uniting lives through the universal language of song. The show's closing section returns to high-energy hits, Say You, Say Me, and All Night Long, All Night. Yet even here, Lionel infuses subtle reminders of his muse. A pause before the chorus, a whispered "This one's for you." As the final chord fades, he steps to the lip of the stage, plucks the white rose from its chair, and holds it aloft in silence. Then, raising his arms to the roaring crowd, he bows deeply, an act of gratitude both for their applause and for the silent presence that has guided him for a lifetime. When the lights finally go down, Lionel Richie steps off stage transformed. He leaves behind more than a set list. He shares a journey that began in Tuskegee dorm rooms and reached its culmination on international arenas, all rooted in a love story that remained offstage for decades. Through scenic contrasts, narrative interludes, and heartfelt tributes, he has shown that legends don't just perform hits. They invite audiences into the intimate spaces where those hits were born. By naming his muse as the love of his life, Lionel has rewritten his legacy, proving that the heart of every melody is the story behind it, and that when an artist dares to reveal that story, the echoes can resonate for generations. A.S. Lionel's Eternal Love tour closed its European leg. He reflected on how a single confession had reshaped every aspect of his life and career. No longer an archetypal performer hiding behind his hits, he had become a storyteller whose personal truth infused each note with fresh resonance. His team observed that engagement metrics skyrocketed, not only for ticket sales, but for social campaigns tied to fan stories of devotion. Online forums buzzed with intimate anecdotes. A groom who danced to Truly at his wedding, a nurse who soothed patients by playing Hello on her tablet, a teenager who found the courage to confess his feelings through Lionel's lyrics. Each vignette became a testament to how love, once shared in private, could inspire millions. Capitalizing on this wave, Lionel launched a digital platform called Love Lines, a space where fans could submit essays, videos, or recordings describing how his music had impacted their journeys. Contributors ranged from retirees penning handwritten letters about decades-old memories to young adults creating graphic novels inspired by the emotional arcs of his songs. Lionel personally responded to select submissions, leaving voice note replies that carried his trademark warmth and sincerity. These authentic exchanges blurred the boundary between icon and audience, reinforcing his belief that art existed to connect hearts as much as to entertain minds. Meanwhile, development on Current of Dreams, the memoir Lionel began co-writing, entered its final draft stage. Collaborating with veteran editors, he revisited early memories. Winning a local singing contest as a teenager, the thrill of hearing his song on the radio for the first time, the bittersweet lull of fame when a hit single was followed by an anxious creative drought. Through the writing process, he uncovered patterns, moments when fear had led him to write lighter, carefree melodies, and moments when heartache had steered him toward introspective ballads. By mapping these peaks and valleys, he gained renewed insight into the interplay between his inner life and his art. The memoir's expected release next spring promised to offer readers a deeper understanding of how love and loss had carved his artistic path. In parallel, Lionel began mentoring emerging artists through a series of virtual masterclasses. Drawing on decades of studio experience and stage anecdotes, he offered guidance on crafting melodies, conveying emotion through vocal inflection, and building genuine audience rapport. Students paid modest fees to access these sessions, with scholarships reserved for talented musicians from underserved communities. The program, titled Heartstrings Academy, partnered with music schools in South Africa, Brazil, and Southeast Asia, ensuring that Lionel's influence extended beyond English-speaking markets. His desire to give back aligned naturally with his confession. The woman who believed in him first had embodied generosity of spirit, and he honored that legacy by nurturing new talent. Merchandise evolved too. Beyond traditional tour t-shirts, Lionel introduced limited edition vinyl pressings of his earliest demos, raw recordings made on tape decks in dimly lit bedrooms. Each vinyl included a reproduction of a handwritten lyric sheet and a facsimile of a postcard he once sent Evelyn during a cross-country recording session. Fans treasured these artifacts, orders shipped out with care, accompanied by thank you notes scrawled in Lionel's own handwriting. The tactile nature of these items, warm ink, textured paper, analog grooves, echoed his emphasis on authenticity in an era dominated by digital noise. As the tour moved into North America, Lionel experimented with immersive concert experiences. In select venues, he collaborated with multimedia artists to create projection-mapped visuals that wove archival footage with fan-submitted clips from Love Lines. During one performance of You Are, the stage backdrop transformed into a mosaic of faces and voices, each pixel representing a personal tribute to the enduring power of love. The effect was electric. Audiences saw themselves reflected on stage, a reminder that Lionel's confession had become a conduit for collective storytelling. Ticket purchases for these special events often sold out in minutes, underscoring how innovation and intimacy could coexist. Even as he embraced new formats, Lionel remained mindful of balance. Hotel suites and concert halls were punctuated by family video calls, weekend retreats to his estate in Beverly Hills, and quiet mornings spent sketching new song ideas in a leather-bound journal. He continued the ritual of early-run recordings, vocal warm-ups over coffee, allowing the dawn's promise to permeate every phrase. Through these practices, he preserved the sense of wonder that first drove him to pursue music, ensuring that his creativity remained anchored in genuine curiosity rather than industry demands. In interviews, Lionel spoke openly about the confession's lasting impact. He credited it with liberating him from the fear of overexposure, allowing him to lean fully into vulnerability on and off stage. His candidness inspired fellow artists to share their own untold stories, sparking a ripple effect across the music industry. The movement, tagged #HeartOfSong, encouraged songwriters to name their own muses, reshaping how audiences experienced live performance. As a leading figure in this cultural shift, Lionel found purpose not in chart positions, but in fostering an environment where truth and melody could flourish together. Looking ahead, Lionel planned a global festival dubbed Echoes of Us, intended as a celebration of cross-cultural musical collaboration. He envisioned artists from diverse backgrounds sharing stages, blending genres as varied as flamenco and funk, salsa and soul. At the festival's center would stand the same empty chair and white rose motif from his Eternal Love tour, symbols of both absence and presence, of loss that fuels creation. In this grand gathering, Lionel saw the culmination of his confessions journey, a testament that naming love out loud could unify voices across continents, generations, and cultures. In the final analysis, Lionel Richie's admission at 74 transcended a mere personal revelation. It reopened conversations about authenticity in an age of curated personas, underscored the vital role of mentorship and community, and demonstrated how one artist's courage to share private truth could ignite a global movement. As he approached the next phase of his career, Lionel remained guided by the same ethos that shaped his confession, that every song is born from real emotion, every performance is a shared exchange, and every audience member is both witness and participant in the ongoing story of love. Under the glow of exit lights after a sold-out night in Chicago, Lionel Richie slips from backstage into a quiet corridor lined with portraits from every era of his career. Early snaps of the Commodores cluster beside, black and white Polaroids of studio sessions, and candid family photos. He pauses before a shot of himself as a young man, guitar in hand, smiling at a dream still forming. That moment captures the trajectory he's traveled, from college radio hopeful to global icon, from guarded performer to candid storyteller. Each frame reminds him that his confession was more than a fleeting headline. It was a gateway into the deeper truths behind every note he's ever sung. In the quiet of that hallway, Lionel reflects on how his art has always been entwined with personal narrative, long before he spoke of the love of my life. As a songwriter, he instinctively tapped into universal emotions, longing, joy, heartbreak, but he also carried an unspoken vow to keep certain parts of himself private. Yet this tour, this memoir, these podcasts and platforms have taught him that revealing the sparks that ignite creativity can amplify its power. By showing the source of his inspiration, he's invited audiences into the workshop of his soul, where melody and memory collide to spark songs that transcend time. Tomorrow, he will board a plane bound for Sydney, where festival organizers await his arrival for a multimedia performance that merges live music with excerpts from Current of Dreams. He anticipates jet lag and the whirlwind of sound checks, but he also looks forward to sitting down with local songwriters to exchange stories, continuing the mission he began with his confession, to foster connection through shared experience. In the email chain he reviewed earlier, hopeful artists from Australia to New Zealand expressed gratitude for his Heartstrings Masterclass program. He remembers the young musician from Brisbane who told him, "Your openness gave me the courage to share my own story in a song." Moments like that remind Lionel that his legacy will be measured not only by record sales, but by the courage he inspires in others to step into the spotlight of their own truths. Despite the frenetic pace, Lionel makes time each morning to write in his journal. He divides the pages into two columns, song ideas and reflections. Under the latter, he jots observations about life on the road, the warmth of a stranger's smile, the subtle differences in sunrise colors from one continent to the next, the quiet pride a child feels when hearing endless love in a new language. These reflections feed into his creative process. A melodic hook may be inspired by a morning walk in Sydney's Botanic Gardens, a lyric by a conversation with a local fan who reminds him that love stories are both deeply personal and fundamentally universal. In interviews, he's asked whether he'll ever reveal more names or details about his muse. He smiles thoughtfully and answers that some stories benefit from a veil of mystery, leaving space for listeners to project their own experiences into the music. Yet he acknowledges that every artist stands at the intersection of the known and the unknown, and his confession was a step toward narrowing that distance. He hopes to encourage his peers to share their own pivotal moments, the times when private encouragement became public art, when whispered advice turned into chart-topping hits. Later this year, he plans a retreat in Tuscany for graduates of Heartstrings Academy, combining songwriting workshops with guided visits to olive groves and vineyard terraces. He envisions mornings spent unraveling chord progressions under oak trees, afternoons exchanging life stories over communal meals, and evenings performing impromptu sets beneath starlit skies. By weaving creative practice with moments of stillness, Lionel aims to nurture both skill and spirit, continuing the ethos first instilled in him by the woman he named the love of my life. In the larger arc of his career, Lionel recognizes that every phase has been defined by contrasts: the bright lights and backstage shadows, the roar of applause and the silence of introspection, the polished hits and the raw demos. His confession added another layer to that interplay, melding public triumph with private testimony. And now, as he moves forward, he carries that blend into every new venture: a memoir that reveals his inner compass, a podcast that amplifies unheard voices, a tour that honors both spectacle and sincerity. When the final curtain falls on the Eternal Love tour, Lionel knows the journey will continue in new forms. He imagines future collaborations, perhaps a dance remix of a classic ballad or a duet with a rising star whose story resonates with his own. He dreams of commissioning young filmmakers to create short films inspired by his songs, offering fresh perspectives on themes of devotion and resilience. Each project will build on the foundation laid by his confession, demonstrating that authenticity is a renewable resource. The more it's shared, the richer it becomes. As Lionel leaves the corridor of portraits behind and steps into the cool night air, he senses that his story is still unfolding. The love he named on stage was both a private truth and a public gift, and it set in motion a ripple effect stretching beyond any single concert or record. In honoring that love, he has invited us all to reevaluate the narratives behind our favorite songs and to consider the unseen hands that shape our own creative journeys. And as he looks up at the city lights blending with the stars, Lionel knows that the greatest melodies yet to come will arise from the harmonies we create when we dare to share our stories in full.